This is one of the top topics I've had people ask about lately, and that is protecting yourself and your business against Russian hackers. So I've got a presentation. We're going to run through it. We're going to talk about what you can do. Hi, I'm Craig Peterson, your Chief Information Security Officer, and you're listening to News Radio, WGAN AM 560 and FM 98.5. Hey, join me on the Morning Drive Wednesday mornings at 7:34. We'll keep you up to date with all of the latest in technology. This has been a long time coming. I have been doing a lot over the years of webinars, of online meetings, trying to help people understand what's going on, what can be done. And I got a great email this week from one of the listeners who's been, on my email list now for years. I'm not even sure how many years. And he was saying, hey, thanks for giving all of this information for free for us small businesses that just can't afford it. And I got to thinking, because there have been a lot of requests lately, for instance, backups. How should I be doing them? What should I be doing? And a number of other topics that really all kind of go together into the how do I protect myself, my business, from ransomware from these Russian hackers. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go through a few of these. This is going to be a series. We're going to continue this here in weeks ahead. And I appreciate all of your feedback. And if you miss part of it, make sure you email me, just me@craigpeterson.com. Let me know, and I'll be glad to send some of it to you. Now, I'm recording this on video as well, so it's great when you're driving around and listening in, picking up some tidbits. And if you do want to see the recorded version, you, again, drop an email to me at craigpeterson.com, or search for me on YouTube or on one of the other sites that are out there like Rumble. And you'll find this as I release it, right? Because this is going to take a few weeks to really get into the whole thing. So let's get started. I'm going to pull this up here full screen for those watching at home. And what this is called today, we're talking about protecting your business and yourself from Russian hackers, because they have been out there. They have been causing just all kinds of problems. But there's a few things that you can do, and I have them up on the screen here. Let me pull them up. But I want to get into the background first. There's this Russian ransomware group. They're a bunch of bad guys, and it's called Conti. Now, Conti has been around for a long time. These are the guys that have been ransoming us. They're the guys who have been ransoming the businesses. They've been ransoming government. You might have heard them. They've got into hospitals. They have been all over the place. And they've raised a whole lot of money for the Russians. I'm also going to tell you about a couple of things you can do here, because there's a real neat trick when it comes to keeping Russians out of your computers. But Conti decided, hey, listen, we are all for Russia and President Putin. So they came out with an official warning. I want to read this to you. It says, if anybody will decide to organize a cyber attack or any war activities against Russia, we are going to use our all possible resources to strike back at the critical infrastructures of an enemy. Yeah, not the best English, but much better than my Russian. I got to say that. I know like 2 words or so in Russian. But they said that they were announcing full support for President Putin. That's a pretty bad thing if you ask me. They also have ties to Russian intelligence, intelligence, right? But what are we talking about really? Well, think of the KGB, the FSB is what they're called nowadays, but directly tied in. China and North Korea, Iran are also now tied in with Russia to varying degrees, but all of them are a little bit concerned about getting into it a little too much. But we're going to talk about their tactics. That's what's important today. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? What can you do about it? So the first thing is password spraying. This is big deal. I've got a nice big slide up here. I like that color blue. I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty. But password spraying is something we all need to understand a little bit better. It's a brute force attack that has been really hurting many of us. Let me see if I can get this to work. For some reason, it has decided it just doesn't want to go. So, let me see here. What is up? Always something, isn't it? It's just, I'm getting a white screen. But it's a brute force attack, targets users who have common passwords. Now, this is a problem when we're talking about passwords. If you have a password that has been breached in any of these breaches that have gone on over the last however long, right? 30 years plus now, that password is known to the bad guys. So what they'll do is they'll take that common password and they'll start to try it. So password spraying is where they will go to like a bank site, or they'll go to Google. Oftentimes they're trying to get at your email account. So if you have Google email or Yahoo or Hotmail, they'll try and use passwords that they have found against accounts that they have found on those various sites. That ends up being quite a big problem for everybody out there. Okay, I got that screen back here, so I'll put that up for those people who are watching. But they will send multiple times attacks using variations of these passwords, and it's known as kind of a low and slow method of password hacking, because if they were to go bam, 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 and send all of these passwords and login attempts at once, they'd get caught. The automated systems would say, hey, wait a minute, this is not good. We're going to cut you off. In fact, that's what I do for my clients. We have remote access using SSH, which is an encryption session so that we can have a terminal session. And if you try and log in 3 times, we automatically zap you. Right? We shut you down. So they take a very slow approach to this password spraying technique. And they're also going after volume, which makes a whole lot of sense. And there are right now billions of passwords, usernames, email addresses that have been stolen that are sitting out in the dark web. So you've got to make sure that you are not reusing passwords, right? How many times have we talked about that? You've got one common password that you're using over and again. Well, that's a problem. But they're not going to keep hacking your account. They're going to switch from one account to another because they don't want to get locked out. Just like I lock out somebody who's trying to get in. So if someone's coming from that same IP address, that same internet site, and they're trying to log into that same account multiple times, bam, they are gone. So with password spraying, they're trying to get around the problem of you noticing they're trying to get into a bunch of different accounts, and they try and leverage it. So they'll oftentimes use multiple computers that they've stolen access to. We've talked about that before too. Gets to be a real big problem. Now, they're also targeting these single sign-on and cloud-based applications, because once they're on using one of these federated authentication protocols, they can mask the malicious traffic. We've heard some of these hacks lately where they're using a token that they managed to pick up from somebody's email, right, account, or they got onto Microsoft and they got into the email account on Microsoft. That happened recently in a supply chain attack. SolarWinds, you heard about that, 2021, right? So they're going after these email applications, including Microsoft, what Microsoft has done. They're going after routers and Internet of Things devices for a very good reason. Those IoT devices, which are things like your smart lights, they can be controlling the cameras outside. They go on and on. There's thousands, millions of them now, actually, all the way through your microwave. They tend to not be very well protected. So that's a real big target for them. So step 1, they want to acquire a list of usernames. Step 2, they're going to spray the passwords. Where do they get those passwords and those usernames? Well, they get them from breaches. So again, if you have an account that's breached at some online shopping site, a big one, a small one, it doesn't really matter. That particular breach is now well known, and they can, will, and do gain access to your account, which is step 3, right? Gain access to it. It gets to be a serious, serious problem. Okay, how do you know if you are under attack? Number 1, there is a spike in failed logins. This is where having a system, and there's technical terms and stuff for this. I'm trying to avoid a lot of those terms. But this is where the system is watching logins, noticing that there's a problem, and going ahead and stopping it, right? Not just noticing it, but stopping it. Very important to do. There are a high number of locked accounts, which means what? Well, it means that, again, someone's been trying to log in. You should make sure that your account, if there are invalid logins, automatically locks it out after some number of attempts. 5 attempts is usually considered to be okay. I know on my phone, for instance, I have a higher number than that because sometimes the grandkids get at it. But when it comes to your business account, when it comes to your bank account, you probably don't want to have a whole bunch of attempts, right? And then unknown or valid or invalid, I should say, user attempts. Again, why are they trying to log in with a username that just doesn't exist? Yeah, it can be a problem. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk about some steps that you can take here to really remediate, maybe even stop a password spraying attack. I've already given you a few ideas here, but what are some active things that you can do, particularly for a small business, to really protect yourself? Hey, stick around. We'll be right back. CraigPeterson.com. All right. One down. Russia has been hacking our computers. Russia is continuing to hack our computers, and this is a real problem. So we are going to talk right now about how to stop some of these things. We already talked about password spraying. How do you stop it? Hi, I'm Craig Peterson, your Chief Information Security Officer, and you're listening to News Radio, WGAN, AM 560 and FM 98.5. Hey, join me on the Morning Drive Wednesday mornings at 7:34. It's just me and Matt and you. There are a lot of things we have to pay attention to, and that's what I'm going to be doing in the weeks ahead. We're going to be going through some of the things you need to do to keep yourself safe, to keep your business safe in this really dangerous online world. There are so many things going on, so many people that are losing their retirement, businesses losing their operating accounts. We've seen it before with clients of ours. Well, you know, they're clients now, and it was just a devastating thing to them. So I don't want that to happen to you. Now, if you are interested, all of this is recorded, and I am doing this as video as well. We've got slides, and you can find out more about it. Just email me, me@craigpeterson.com. It's really that simple, and then let me know. And I'll be glad to send it off to you, okay? This is available to anybody. I'm trying to help, and we've had a lot of emails recently about some of these things. So this is covering everything from the password spraying we're talking about right now through backups and other things that you need to do. So let's get going on our spraying problem. So what are the steps that we need to take in order to really kind of remediate against one of these password spraying attacks? And frankly, it is a lot to do. It has a lot to do with our users and what we do, right? If you're a business, if you are an individual, we need to be using longer passwords. Now, we're not talking about all of these random characters that we used to have. I remember having to have my password be at least 4 characters long way back when. Didn't even have to have a username. It was just all based on the password. And things changed over the years. The latest standards that are out there right now come from NIST, which is the National Institute for Science and Technology. They are the guys that put together all of the guidelines that federal government and businesses need to follow. And they're telling us that longer passwords means elaborate passphrases. So you should use 15-character passwords. I had an article just a couple of weeks ago saying that an 8-character password can be cracked almost instantly, certainly within an hour. Any 8-character password, right? So if you're still using that, you've got to make a change. And obviously, 9 characters is a lot more possibilities. It takes a lot longer to crack. I don't have those numbers right in front of me. But 15 is kind of the ideal. So use passphrases instead of single words. So phrases like, I don't know, Secretariat won the Kentucky Derby. There you go. There's a phrase. So what you would do is put maybe dashes between each one of the words. Maybe you would go ahead and use a comma, put some numbers in there, put some special characters in upper, lower case, right? So it's basically uncrackable at that point. And, that's what you want, right? Next one. When we're talking about rules for your passwords, the best passwords are the passwords that you can remember without writing them down, and words that don't make sense to anyone else that's reading them. I remember taking a memory course a few years back, and they had random words, and you had to remember them. And the whole idea was, okay, visualize this happening. And as I recall, man, it's been a lot of years. I won't say decades, but it has been since I did this. I still remember part of it, right? It was first word was airplane, next was envelope, the next one was paper clip, next one was pencil. So I visualized an airplane flying into an envelope, and that envelope then goes into a paper clip, and a pencil writes on the outside like it's addressing it to someone. That is a good little password, actually. Airplane, envelope, paperclip, pencil, with a mixed case and maybe a number or 2 or special symbol thrown in. Those are the types of rules that we're talking about, the types of rules that really, really matter. Next up here, whoops, wrong keyboard. Stay away from frequently used passwords. We've talked about this many, many times. If you're using one of the better password managers, like for instance 1Password, you will automatically have any passwords that you either enter in or that it creates, you'll have them checked via a website out there. It's called, it's called Have I Been Pwned? I hated to say this because how do you spell it, right? It's all one big long word, haveibeenpwned.com, and pwned is PWNED.com. So it will tell you if a password that you're trying to use is a known password, if it has been found out in the wild, okay? Use unique passwords for every site you visit. I can't stress this enough. We were talking about password spraying. If you use the same password and email address on multiple sites, you're in big trouble. Because all they have to do is try your email address and your password for whichever site it is that they might want to try out. Remember, many of them are trying to get into your email, and they have done that successfully, even with Microsoft email, if you have their Microsoft 365 service. And you might want to read the fine print there very, very carefully, because Microsoft does not guarantee much of anything. You make sure you back it up yourself, make sure you do all of these things, because Microsoft just plain isn't doing them for you, okay? Next one here, next up is our password manager. And I mentioned this before. Installing and using a password manager is phenomenal. It automates the generation of passwords. If you have it integrated with your web browser, it now allows your web browser to work with your password manager. So when you go to a site, you can have it pull up your passwords. How could it be much easier than that? It's really rather simple. That way it's keeping track of your logins. And again, 1password.com is the one I recommend. And people get confused when I say that. When I'm saying 1Password, I don't mean only have 1Password used for everything. 1Password is the name of a company, okay? So I'm not talking about only having a single password, but use a password manager. Now, I've got all of these up on the screen right now. If you're interested in getting copies of these, you can go ahead and just email me, me@craigpeterson.com, and I'll make sure I send you a copy of the slide deck of this presentation as well, because this is just so important, frankly. But having these points is going to be huge for you, okay? Now, strange activity, that's another very big deal. And we're going to talk about this when we get back. What is it? What does it mean? But I'm going to hold off the rest of this, I think, for another week. But right now, let's hit this. We're talking about odd login attempts. A lot of login attempts, the excessive login attempts, trends in unusual activities, and you need to basically take measures to block it and determine if this activity is legitimate. Is someone just forgetting their password and spraying themselves, or what's going on, okay? There you go. Simple enough. Hey, everybody, you can find out a lot more, and you'll be getting links to this automatically to these videos, etc. if you're on my email list, craigpeterson.com. And you can email me, me@craigpeterson.com. We'd be glad to send you this or any other information I might have. All right, take care. We'll be right back. Putin has been up to it, guys. This is kind of crazy, but we're going to try and make some sense about this here, too. Hi. Try that again. Let's not do that. Let's rewind. Don't you hate it when this happens? Okay. Putin has been working for a while. In fact, it looks like as early as September in 2021, Putin started going after major U.S. corporations. So we're going to talk about that and what does it mean? Hi, I'm Craig Peterson, your Chief Information Security Officer, and of course, you're listening to News Radio, WGAN AM 560 and FM 98.5. I'd like to invite you to join me on the Morning Drive, Wednesday mornings at 7:34. Matt and I will keep you up to date. Putin has been going crazy for a while. I'm going to put this up on the screen for those of you who are watching either on Rumble or YouTube. But Putin planned this whole invasion apparently quite a while ago. And I got an article from the Washington Post up on MSN talking about what Putin did, at least a little bit about what he did. And you can see right here, if you're following along, that Russian agents came to the home of Google's top executive in Moscow. And what they did is gave an ultimatum. They told that Google, a senior executive, that they needed to pull down an app that was in use in Russia. And this app was polling. It was for people to do polls and say, hey, what do you think about Putin's current performance, etc. Right? We do them in the U.S. all of the time. You hear about the polls right, left, and center. Not Poland, which is a small country next to another small country called Ukraine, next to a large country called Russia. But we're talking about polls, favorability polls. What do you think they should be doing? What do you think the government should be doing? And maybe what they should not be doing. So Putin didn't like this. He didn't like this at all. And so what he did is he sent a couple of guys, ex-KGB, FSB, the secret police over in Russia, by to visit this Google executive. If you're the Google executive, what are you going to do? All right, if you're a Googleizer, you're going to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm out of here." So I'm not sure if this executive was an American or Russian. This article doesn't seem to be clear about it. But what happened is they said, "Okay, well, let's go hide." So they rented a hotel room for the executive. They put her in it. And they rented the room under an assumed name. So it wasn't the real name of the executive. It wasn't tied into Google. And they thought, okay, well, now we're pretty safe because you got hotel security. I guess there are a couple of Google people hanging out with her, and they felt pretty safe, right? Well, what happens next? There is a knock on the door. These same agents, again, that are believed to be Russian secret police, showed up at her room and told her that the clock was still ticking because they had given her 24 hours for Google to take down the app because Putin didn't like it. People weren't particularly pleased with Putin. So at that point, of course, it was forget about it, right? And within hours, Google had pulled down the app. Now, you might complain, right? A lot of people might complain about it. It's one thing for a company like Google or Apple to capitulate to a government to do maybe some censorship, like the Great Firewall of China. You might have heard of that, where the Chinese citizens can't get at certain information. Russia has something pretty similar, and U.S. companies have gone ahead and helped build it, provided the technology for it, and put it in place. They sold it to them. I don't like that, in case you didn't guess, right? I'm all for free speech. I think it's very important for any form of a democracy. No question about it. But these companies apparently don't have a problem with that. However, now this is something a little different. If you have employees who are being threatened, and I mean threatened to serve 15 years in a Russian prison, what are you going to do? Right? Are you going to say, no, I'm going to leave that app up? And then now all of a sudden your executives or even a coder, somebody, a programmer, the guy that sweeps the floors, whatever. Are you going to let them be arrested so that you can have this app up on your Google Play Store or your App Store over at the Apple side? Probably not. Because, frankly, this is something that is not worth it. So what do? Well, I think the only answer is what we've seen company after company do, and that is get out of Russia completely. And there was an interesting story, I read this recently, about McDonald's. You might remember back in the Soviet days, McDonald's worked out this deal with the Soviet Union to open a McDonald's right there in downtown Moscow. I guess it was pretty prominent. I don't know if it was, I think it might have been even on Red Square. And there were people lined up to have an American hamburger, and it's been pretty popular the whole time. Well, McDonald's closed that store and pulled out of the country. Starbucks is pulled out. Are they going to reopen? Because I don't think either one of them said, forget about it, we're not coming back. But I know both of them have closed down operations. Automobile manufacturers from the U.S. have closed down operations. What is their choice? You can't just go ahead and say, okay, well, you just go arrest people. Or, we'll keep quiet for now and come back later. what are you supposed to do? That's part of the problem with these oligarchies, with these people who are basically all powerful. Now, we actually see some of that here in the U.S., which is just a shame, because we see these companies going ahead and cutting out free speech, saying, oh, you can't say that, right? There was a time where if you said masks work, that you would have been censored. And then there was a time where if you said masks don't work, cloth masks don't work, you would have been censored. There was a time if you said masks aren't necessary, you would have been censored, right? But the science is settled, which is crazy. Science is never settled. And we could go on with this for hours and hours, but Putin is not a good guy. And this article, I'm going to bring it up on the screen here again, but this article talks about Putin in a single year. And again, this is MSN. Putin had his political nemesis, Alexei Navalny. Yeah, I got it right. He had him imprisoned after a poisoning attempt failed to kill him. Do you remember that whole poisoning attempt where they gave him this really nasty radioactive byproduct, as I recall? And Putin went ahead and basically shut down. They pushed all of these independent news organizations to the brink of extinction. Look at what happened with Russia Today. The entire staff walked off on the air, saying we're not going to report on any of these lies that are coming out of Moscow. It's happened again and again. Putin orchestrated a Kremlin-controlled takeover of Russia's Facebook equivalent. And he's also issued liquidation orders against human rights organizations. And so all this is going on. What are you going to do if you're Apple? If you're Google, right? I can see the criticism of those countries, or companies, I should say, when they're cooperating with the regimes, putting in place things like facial recognition to spy on people, to have a social credit system, these great firewalls in these countries. But when you have something like this happening, forget about it. There's nothing you can do. And the crackdown is accelerated. Facebook and Twitter were knocked offline by the government for millions of Russians. News outlets that survived the state harassment for years shut down in the face of a new law imposing 15-year prison sentences for spreading fake news, right? It's incredible what has happened, and we've got to be careful here in the U.S. too, because we see this censorship. You know, there were a lot of complaints about what was happening under Donald Trump, President Biden, both Obama and Biden. Both of those have done some of these same things to a lesser extent. Stick around, we'll be right back. Oh, my. So there you go. I had a friend of mine, actually, he came by today, and he was asking me, hey, do you identify yourself as kind of libertarian or conservative? And I told him that I do, because of a couple of reasons. One, I think it's important for people to know, right? I am kind of a middle-of-the-road libertarian, frankly. And it's something that you can't hide, right? You can't really hide who you are or what you plan on doing. Just the selection of the articles that I make tells you a little bit about myself, right? And so he was wondering, because there has been so much that's being censored online because you're a conservative or you're a libertarian. You know, libertarians, we've agreed over the years with the Democrats on various things. We've agreed with the Republicans on various things. But now the censorship, it's just insane. Anyways, all right, stick around. I got to put a marker in here and be right back.